Hey everybody, I am at Flatland Guitars with Paul here in Fargo, North Dakota, and today he's going to be showing us the correct way of changing strings on a floating tremolo system, a locking tremolo system. So how you doing, buddy?
Doing well.
Good, good. So go ahead and take it away.
All right. First of all, there's a few tools you might want to have handy getting going on this project. One, generally a Phillips head screwdriver. I believe it's a 3 millimeter Allen wrench for 90% of the Floyd systems out there. String nipper, you can cut the ends off real nice and clean, and string winder, or in my case, a good drill for that.
Perfect. When you say Floyd system, you mean Floyd Rose?
Yeah, it's just kind of it's a brand name that it's become a generic term.
Okay.
So a double locking system, in this case a floating tremolo system, in which you're balancing your string tension with the springs of the tremolo in the back. So if you have a higher string gauge than what you had on there prior, this tremolo's going to pull and keep pulling up as you tune it to the pitch you would like.
Right, so there's more tension on the top than there is on the springs on the bottom.
So it's a balancing act.
Right.
If you're sticking with the same string gauge, which what we're going to do in this case, shouldn't have to worry about it because the tremolo is already set. But there are some things that are going to happen if this is the first time that you're restringing your locking tremolo that you may not realize.
Right. So if you're changing strings like on a standard Fender that has a tremolo system but it doesn't lock, and obviously you've probably noticed that those tremolo systems or the bridge sits against the body, right? Where this one, like he was just showing, it's actually, like you can see, I can stick my finger underneath there because it's actually floating in the air. And a lot of my guitars, if you've seen my videos, you notice that this is going to look somewhat similar to one of the guitars that I use. So the reason it's cut underneath is so you can push backwards and you can make the pitches go up as well as being able to go that way and make it go down. Which is really awesome if you are a tremolo guy, if you like whammy bars, which I do. But like Paul was saying, it can be a real headache on a multitude of levels because it's such a game of trying to, like, when you change strings, making sure that the balance is there so the tremolo system itself stays straight with the strings on the top and the springs on the bottom. So like I've been on stage many times and I'll break a string on a tremolo system like this, and the guitar becomes
game
absolutely
over.
The guitar becomes completely unplayable because it's when one string breaks, obviously the springs on the back grab that extra tension now that's gone and pulls this backwards. Then these strings go up in pitch, but they don't go up systematically. It's not like it all goes up at the same thing. It just gets all whacked out of shape. And so you just have to be careful when it comes to a floating tremolo system. There's a lot more involved. In my opinion, they're very much worth it, but there's a lot more work involved. So, okay, well, thanks, buddy.
You bet. So when you start, the first thing you want to do is take a look at your guitar on the side profile and look at your bridge and take just mainly a mental note of where that bridge is sitting. And what you can do if you have one handy, which is a real nice tool to have, pick them up at any hardware store, just a small 6-inch ruler. They measure down to 64ths, so you can get pretty accurate measurements. And what I'll do a lot of times is I'll measure from the top of the guitar body to the top of the bridge. So in the front of it, and I'll see it's about 1/8 of an inch off the top of the body. And then I'll measure, in the back. And usually they're on a flat plane, and it's sitting at 1/8 of an inch there as well. So I know exactly where that bridge is sitting with the full string tension where it's going to be.
So if you buy a guitar, a floating tremolo system guitar, and it's sitting like this, chances are you should bring it into someone like Paul and have them, set it up for you or help you adjust it a little bit if you've never done that before. I know, like on some of my Ibanez's, they even have a little line on there, which sometimes gets buried when you drop this down into the body. But there is a line on the side of it where you can kind of just visually line it up. And this one may actually have one, but it's because this is down so far in there, you can't see the line anymore. So.
Okay. And then from that point, now you take a note of where your bridge is sitting. Not all the base plates are flat. Some of them do have different shapes and whatnot. So you can just measure where your bridge is at on your particular guitar. This one is flat all the way across, and that's the way we like to see it. And most of them are going to be that way. So starting out, a lot of things that I like to do, just something to do first, doesn't really matter. It just makes life easier down at the end of the road. Your little fine tuners that you're going to have on the back of the guitar, once you lock your nut down, these are how you're going to do all your fine tuning. And a lot of times they're sitting a little screwy because you've messed with them over time. Yep. So I'll just kind of find the middle ground for them. So they're in the middle of their rotation. So what you can do, you can take one, push it all the way down, and skip one, go to the next, lift it all the way up. And it will give you a good idea of where your middle position is. So find the middle position on that centerpiece, and then bring your other one back to that. And so forth. And then you can just go down the line and have all of them in the same position. So it's just something you don't have to do once you tune the guitar up and realize, oh, they're all screwy.
Yep, exactly. Then you got to start all over again and readjust those.
So that's just a simple tip that makes life easier down the road. Now that we're at this point, I'll take the 3mm Allen head and take these nut clamps off and just place them somewhere where you're not going to lose them.
So remember, while he's doing that, with these fine tuners, you know, once you've tuned the guitar, you've changed the strings and everything Paul's going to do. Once you've locked it all down, these fine tuners are really literally for fine tuning. You're not tuning a half step down or drop tuning or something like that with these. So again, the beauty of the locking system is that the guitar, if we do this correctly, the guitar will stay in tune. You could beat on that tremolo system and it'll stay in tune. But you can't tune a half step down without having to readjust everything, or a drop tuning without having to readjust things. And again, it's not a big deal. It's just more time consuming, where you might have a guitar with a regular bridge on it, or even a Fender that has a whammy bar, but it's against the body. You can drop tune, you know, you can grab that 6 string and tune it down, and it's very easy. These aren't like that. They require some time to do things like that.
All right, so now we'll take and loosen up the strings. On these, as you loosen them up, you're going to tighten up if you start on the low E, your high E is going to go really sharp. So to prevent it from breaking, you can just kind of loosen all the tension on the strings by pushing your truss rod down. And just create a little bit of slack on the tuning keys. And now this bridge is going to go all the way down in the body. And on some bridges, your string clamp screws are going to be in the back, in which case it's nice to have a little piece of wood or cork-lined plastic you can put underneath to keep your tremolo up, so you have access to all the screws. In this case, it's nice because they're all on top. You just let it down, and you still have full, complete access to them. Most cases, I'll just take the tremolo arm out, and then go ahead and loosen up the string clamps on here. And there's different types of saddles where the strings are going to either, you can clip the ball ends of the strings off, as these are, or you can leave the ball ends on some of them. Most cases, you'll just clip them, and that's what we're going to do on this one as well.
Right, so this is a newer model, like some of the other Ibanez gems that I own. They don't have that feature. You literally have to clip the ball ends off and then stick the end in there, and it'll hit a base, and it stops there, and then that's when you clamp it up. On this particular model, you could literally clip like what he's got here. You could clip that off and stick it down all the way through there and pull it out the other side, because it's completely empty on the other side. And of course, the reason they did that is that way you don't have to clip the ball end off. You can take it like a normal guitar. You can string it through that side and just leave this open a little bit and pull it through, and the ball end will stop right up in there. So it's pretty cool.
And then once you get the strings off the guitar, first thing that I do, your tuning machines are always, you want to keep them in good shape. Best way to do that, have a 10 millimeter open and face wrench ready, and you just give them make sure they're snug. You don't want to tighten them too tight, in which case, if you do, you probably break the collar of the machine head, and you have to get a new one. But you want them snug. So get it to the point where it doesn't turn at a light touch, and then just give it a quick little jolt, make sure it's tight. And then there are screws on the tuning buttons here. Oops. And what those do is control the tension of your tuning button. And if they get too loose, it can really mess with the gear and all that stuff in there. So you want to keep everything snug. It just helps your tuning stability down the road, and just prolongs the life of your machine heads. And you can tighten them too tight as well, and they just become impossible to turn.
Yep, I've had that before too.
So once we get to this point, just kind of a great place to start with a gentle cleaning of the guitar. Some people sweat a lot and their boards get caked with gunk, and there's a real easy way to clean that up. With electric guitars, the way I do this, I want to use I usually get the wide painter's tape, and I will cover the pickup up and try to get underneath the front edge. And what this does is will prevent any shavings from the steel wool. I'll use the 4/0 steel wool and do long strokes down the fretboard. And it will clean the gunk off the board, keeps the wood looking good, and it will polish up the frets, make them nice and smooth. So if you are bending, strings don't stick to the fret at all. Sometimes when they get tarnished and stuff,
You bet.
and it does that. So generally, just I'll start with the top portion of the board, kind of 1 to 12, 1 to 15 range, just gentle strokes up and down. And what that's going to do, pull all the gunk off the board, polish up the frets. And then we'll do the bottom portion. And this is where you want the tape on here, because being steel wool and being a magnet, it's going to attract, obviously. Mm-hmm. So just a nice quick clean. And then I got a good brush. A little brush handy so you can take and just get those filings off the guitar. And at this point, it's good to have a little paper towel handy. I'll just rip it into a small section and then fold it up. And generally, there's lots of different fretboard conditioners out there. Stuff I like is it's called F1 oil. It's by a company called Music Nomad, and it works great on rosewood, ebony, maple. You don't need to worry about it. And I wouldn't do the steel wool on maple, just because it is a finished with lacquer.
Sure.
Generally, and you're going to scuff it up, and it's going to look gunky. So with a maple board, generally just a little bit of guitar polish and wipe it down, and that's all it really takes on those. But this conditions the wood, and in conditioning the wood just kind of keeps the wood from drying out. When the wood will dry out, the fret slots will open up, and you'll get high frets. They'll pop out of the board a little bit. So this just it's a preventative measure, but it also helps the guitar look really nice.
Sure.
And you just kind of go in between the frets. And if you get it on the frets, what you're going to do doesn't matter. Usually you'll just wipe it off afterwards anyway. So,
So does that stuff help in like covering up scuff marks, things like that too?
Not really. Depending, because if it's a dent in the wood or you have long nails and you play your guitar a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get divots in there.
Right.
Those are just going to happen. You can't really do anything about it.
Sure.
However, though, sometimes you do get like a little scrape in the wood. That's where the steel will take some of that out.
Gotcha.
So, and then I'll just take the other section of that paper towel. Doesn't need to sit on the board very long. It soaks right in, and you just kind of wipe it off.
Looks good.
And then at this point, you have complete access to everything the strings are covering prior, so you can get in, actually make your guitar look real nice. So I'll just generally take, again, I use Music Nomad products because I like it. There's lots of polishes out there. Everybody likes something different. So just generally put a couple sprays on a towel, and you can get right in there and it'll pull any dust, debris out of there. And bridge as well, you can get up into that, because this section of the bridge tends to collect a lot of gunk, and you can get all that stuff off. And then the headstock as well. Up by the machine heads, you can get all the dust out from there pretty easily at this point. And now we're about to start stringing the guitar.
Cool.
On some of the guitars, behind the locking nut, well, first of all, let's start at the locking nut. There's different styles of these. This one is got the screws in the back of the neck here. And you just want to make sure they're tight, they're solid. Generally, you're going to be about a 2.5 millimeter wrench. Tighten those up. Some of them, they screw down from the top, and that's just going to be a Phillips head screw. And eye it, make sure it's up tight against the edge of the fretboard. If it's got any gap in there, you're going to want to get that checked out, because that's going to affect the intonation of the instrument, and
Sure.
It's going to play horribly out of tune. So, but yeah, just by checking out, make sure it's solid, it's tight, it's not moving around. This one is in real good shape, so I don't need to do anything with that. The other thing is, behind the nut, a lot of times there's a string tree that is pushing the strings down behind the nut, because you want the strings to come back off the back edge of the nut. Otherwise, if this string tree isn't here and you lock your clamps down, your whole guitar goes, half step sharp. And then sometimes you don't have the room down there to compensate. So this will help alleviate that by pulling the strings back.
Gotcha.
And so it's pre-bending them before you clamp it,
Right.
is what it's doing. Sometimes it's easier to restring the guitar with this out of the way. So this is where the Phillips head screwdriver comes in handy, and they come out real nice and easy.
So when you screw it back in, is there a point where you'll feel it?
Yep.
Like, how do you know not to go too far?
Well, when the screw pops out the back of the neck,
Yeah.
that's too far. No, in all seriousness, no. You can kind of watch the back ledge of the nut to see that the strings are touching on the back here. Sometimes they won't go all the way down to the end, but they'll get really close, and that's all you really need.
Gotcha.
So if you feel like if you don't want to mess with it, you don't have to. You can just string it under. In this case, it just makes life easier
Sure.
rather than fishing them underneath and,
Sure.
and all that. So yeah, at this point we have cleaned up the guitar, removed the strings. The bridge is sitting free here. Machine head's up here. Remove the string tree, and now we're ready to string her up. So, like mentioned earlier, we're going to cut the ball ends off the strings. So, generally just unwind them, grab the string clipper, and then if you look at the string, there's going to be windings that are twisted around to hold the ball end on. Clip just past that, because you don't want to have any of those sitting in there either.
Sure.
That can affect how it sits in the saddle and
Sure.
can create problems down the road. So most of the saddles are just going to have a flat spot on the bottom. They only go in so far. So these ones, we can just string it straight through. So just push it in far enough there's no real set rule on it, but as long as there's enough in there for the clamp to hold it, and then give it a good, tug, make sure it's tight. And you don't need to kill your, just by over tightening can create a lot of problems too. So like with the machine heads and everything else, get it to that point where the string is in there nice and snug, and then give it one last little whirl. And so right now I just hit the snug point. The string is locked in pretty tight, and then I'll just give it one little twist. You don't need to, monkey grip it and get crazy tight on there.
Yeah, it's ironic that the string is so thin, but yet it doesn't take as much tension as you think to lock that string in there.
Because what can happen if you over tighten it, not so much on these saddles, but on a lot of the other saddles, over tightening it will either break the back edge of the saddle where the string locks in, and then that guitar is out of function for the night. So Just want to be careful when you're tightening them down. So.
While you're waiting, you could have some smooth music like ABBA playing in the background. Paul really enjoys that, so you could have that playing. But right now we're talking, so we don't have ABBA playing in the background. But
We would, though.
We would, yeah. If you weren't here, that's what we'd be doing right now. Yeah, what's really awesome is when you break a string on stage, and then you have to go on a quick break to change that string. So now the audience is waiting for you, your band is upset with you, and you're panicking because you have to change this string in like 3 minutes. And of course, you're in a club, so it's dark, and you can't see what you're doing. So that's always fun.
All right. So now that all the strings are locked in place, there's lots of methods to do this. This is what I like to do just because it saves time. I'll clip the strings off before I wind them. A lot of people will do it afterwards. This just makes life easy. So what we're doing here is we're going to take and on 6 per side machine head or headstocks like this, I'm going to take the low E string, run it past the first machine head, clip it at the third. So I'm clipping the E string at the D machine head. And I just do that for each string on down the road. The A string I'm going to clip at the G, and the D string at the B.
It's like getting a haircut.
It is. So forth. So yeah, 2 machine heads each. And then on the plain strings, maybe just a hair longer. You want to end up with about 2 to 3 winds on the wound strings around the post. And you want to end up with about 3 to 4 winds on the plain strings around each post. So, and then you can start however you want. I tend to go low to high. Now you're going to want to poke the string through the machine head just so it comes out the other side about the width of a string. Bend it around, and now it's locked in place. It's not moving anywhere.
So do you always go around the back and then twist it? I
could put it in the front.
But then it doesn't stay.
Yeah, it's just easier to get that kink on the string. So you want that 90-degree angle to, it's not going anywhere. It's locked in place.
Right.
So at that point, it makes it easier here because what you can do by holding tension on the string, just then start turning that. Mm-hmm. Versus if you go in the front, you got to try to balance, keep the string in position and turn. So,
right. And you can't really see right now, but he's pressing down here. He's pressing down on the string, and then with his other fingers, he's pulling up on the string to cause tension. So he's literally just kind of twisting it like that.
Yeah, so I'll take my 2 fingers here and lift up, and then my thumb just push down. That way, you're not bending the string at any sharp angles. It just holds good tension. So then I'll grab my string winder and tighten her up. And get a good 3 winds on there. And that's the other thing about clipping the strings this way. You're going to end up with even winds on each string. You want to make sure all the winds are going down the post, not up the post. Or you don't want the strings to overlap either. Not as big of a deal on a locking tremolo, but it's just nice to have everything nice and even. If it were not a locking tremolo and you had overlaps. So
right there, you actually physically wound it around with your hand.
Yep.
Once around.
Everyone I'll do a little bit. I don't really have a set way I go about it. Just wherever the machine head is sitting, and that's just kind of natural for me to do it that way, I guess.
Where, if that wasn't easy for you, one thing you could do is set the machine heads so they were all facing the same way, so you could just go through the back and kink it and then hold it, so you could readjust the machine head prior to putting the strings on if that's easier for you.
And on these, I'm just kind of going with wherever they are.
Sure.
But yeah, so that's definitely a good point. You can definitely set it up to where the machine heads are easiest for you to work with. Like a lot of times they'll be on the side, so the string is coming through the sideways. If it were more like this, I would probably start on, if it was kind of coming angling towards the fretboard, I would come on around the other side. and this is kind of at the limit where I do that. So then what I'll do is kink it at a 90-degree angle, get there, go around the post once, underneath the string that's coming out, and then again, as you wind up, just watch your string, just make sure it's always going underneath the previous wrap. And don't worry about tension or tuning at this point, because...
Just don't tune it too high, obviously.
Yes.
Especially if you've got a drill.
It can go faster than you think sometimes.
Yeah.
And then on these plain strings, I'm getting about 4 winds on the wrap. And that just holds everything nice and tight. And what that's doing also, as the string is wrapping underneath itself, the tuning machine post has kind of a concave section to it. And so as each previous wind goes down, since it's winding out wider, it's pushing up into that extension of the string that's coming through.
Correct.
And then locks that up.
Closing up the hole and everything.
So technically, all of your machine heads are locking machine heads if you string them right.
Sure. Sure.
And there we go. Now you don't have to worry about clipping your strings at the end of the post now, because it's already done. And also, they're not sticking out too far, so you're not going to cut yourself if you run your hands across the tops of the machine heads, which is always a pain.
Yes.
Grab my tuner real quick. You're ready to tune the guitar up. And then this is also the point, if this is your first locking tremolo, you might run into a few issues like I just did here. There is a knife edge on both front edges of the posts. And what happened is when it was all the way back, and as I started putting tension on it, I wasn't watching it, and it popped out of the slot there. So generally, now that one just popped in place, you can just kind of push back. It's not enough. There's too much tension on there for me to do that right now. So just go back to your machine heads, give them loosen them up a little bit, and if you put the arm in place, you can just kind of push it right back down into place. And now it's functioning where it needs to be.
Right. And if you do have a brace, I mean, if you have something where you lock it here, you know, that'll hold those blades in place. But sometimes you get a false sense of how the tension of the string when you do that, where he can feel the string. You know, I've done that before where I'll block this off so it's up in the air, you know, so that doesn't pop off. But then I'll put tension on the strings and I'll notice that this thing is sitting up too high because I put too much tension on there. So you just got to kind of figure out what's most comfortable for you.
So now we're ready to tune. And as if this is the first time with a locking tremolo, what you're going to notice is it's going to take you a while to tune it. You're going to get each string up to pitch. And what I'll do a lot of times in this case is I'll tune each string like a half step sharp.
Do you go in any particular order? Like
I just usually start EDE.
Okay. Just low to high.
And then go back down. You're going to notice, oh, wow, it went really flat. So go back. And now at this point, I'll just go straight to pitch.
Now, what's really important about what's happening with all of this stuff is we are taking into account that we are changing the strings with the same gauge string that we had used prior. And even, you know, if you want to get technical, even the same brand is going to make a difference. So we're putting a set of 10 gauge strings on here. If he was putting a set of 9 gauge strings on here, this is all going to need to be readjusted. And that's a conversation for another time. So just understand that if you want to save yourself some time and some headache, when you go to change your strings on a locking tremolo, floating tremolo system, use the same brand and the same gauge, and your life will be a lot easier. You do agree with that, Paul, that like if you use a 10 gauge set of Ernie balls and then you use a 10 gauge set of Diodario's, it makes a difference.
It does.
On the tremolo setting. And the reason why I say that is because for years I didn't know that. I just thought all brands of strings. 9s were 9s and 10s were 10s, but the tension of the string itself changes relative to the brand or the style of string within that brand or whatever it would be. So,
and now through that, we're still tuning. So again, your first time through a locking tremolo, don't get frustrated. It takes a little bit to get it up to pitch.
As he keeps turning those, of course, what's happening is this back, the bridge is kind of playing a balancing act, right? So as he raises the tension of the 6th string, the other ones are lowering a little bit, and so it's going to keep going until it finds its home.
And we got it.
Cool.
So everything's up to pitch. Generally, what's a good thing to do, you don't necessarily have to do it as much on a locking tremolo necessarily, but just give the strings a good stretch. And here what I'll end up doing is I'll take, again, with my 3 fingers there, and then my thumb, I'll push down with my thumb. So lifting up with my 3 fingers, pushing down with my thumb, starting towards the bridge, and then working your way to the headstock. You don't have to pull super hard. Can break a string doing this. Again, just a good light pull on the string going down the fretboard.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than getting it all done and then locking it down, and then you start playing and then the thing goes out of tune, then you have to unlock it and start all over again. So
and this dropped it down a half step.
Yeah, so it's important to have those strings stretched out.
A little more, half step on that one. And generally you can just do that once. Sometimes I'll go over and do it, a few times on the guitar. And again, now everything dropped out of tune, we're resetting the tension on the bridge.
So like you said, you got to be patient. I've been dealing with these floating tremolos my whole life. Well, he's been dealing with my floating tremolos my whole life. So you really do. You got to be patient. It's important. Once you get them tuned up, once everything's, the strings are stretched out, you get it tuned up, the thing will stay in tune, which is pretty awesome. But you gotta be patient until then.
Okay, so strings are stretched. It's in tune. Next thing you want to do, since we took that string tree off, I'm going to go ahead and put that back on right now. And usually it's pretty simple to tell when to stop. You'll start feeling a little tension on the strings. Like everything on the guitar, you get to that point of tension, give it another little twist after you hit the tension, and that's generally enough. But if you do look at the string and how it's coming down the back edge of the saddle, you just want to make sure it's kind of touching the base plate of the nut the whole way across. And that's what that string tree is doing. So now it may have pulled the guitar a little sharp. Actually, it didn't really do it. Nope. Just a little bit. All right. So everything's back to where it was. As in the beginning, we were trying to get the bridge plate level and sitting where it was when we started. Mm-hmm. So we'll take a peek and see if it is. And I think we switched string gauges or string brands because, well, actually, you know what? We're sitting right where we were. So yeah,
cool.
Everything is golden.
Yeah, because that, again, like for Paul, he might not know, obviously, what somebody had put on here. He can check the gauge, the string size, and tell if it's a 9 or a 10 or 11 or whatever. He's got a tool to do that. But he might not know, obviously, what brand is on there. He probably wouldn't know unless the person who brought it in actually told him what was on there. So he's got to do the best he can to figure that out.
That's correct. Okay, so our bridge is where we want it. String tree's back on. Guitar's tuned up to pitch. Go ahead and put your lock clamps back on. And
now, do you ever notice, Paul, when you put these lock clamps back on and you clamp it down, does it change?
Yeah, it can. And that's because if the string tree is not pulling everything down flat on the nut, once you clap this down, the rest of the strings are going to be pulled sharp just a little bit.
Makes perfect sense, you bet.
Also, on the bottom of your clamp there, it does have a bit of a radius to it. So the nut is kind of curved as such, and this has that curve in there as well. So you're going to want to make sure that sits in there right. And generally, the way that is, the top of the nut clamp there has a kind of a point, like a roof, that should be pointing down the neck. And that's where most of them are set. So you can put them in both ways. It's going to lock it either way. It's just more efficient this way.
Sure.
It's covering all of the string,
Sure.
And then again, tighten down till it hits the point where there's tension, and then just give it another little twist. You can strip out your the nut shelf with too much tension and create problems, and your guitar won't stay in tune, and that's not fun.
All the problems he mentions, he's probably fixed all those for me at some point. So
it's very common on these locking tremolo guitars because lots when you first get one, and I've been guilty of it too. You'd think a little tighter, tighter.
It just seems logical to be cranking on those things, and you don't need to.
You really don't need to. It's all the tuning we've done on the guitar so far, it's been laying flat. Now, when you pick your guitar up and hold it in playing position, it's probably gonna change a little bit because the tension on the neck is sitting differently. Mm-hmm. So it's best not to pick the guitar up off a bench and go hit the stage. So now that you have it in upright position, just that final tuning, just take care of it. And every guitar is different. So after working with your own guitar for a while, you might get used to
one string will go out more than another or something like that.
Or just even tightening the clamps down, like you said, it goes sharp a little bit. So maybe you want to leave a little extra room on your fine tuners in the direction needed. If it's going a little too sharp, you might want to be able to back them off a little more. There we go.
Cool.
Guitar is playing and in tune. We started on this guitar with the action where I like it, and it's still there. If this is where the 6-inch rulers come in really handy. Before you start, if you want to also double check one thing, maybe you should have gone over this beginning, but check where your strings are in the beginning to see when you're done, it should be the same. That means your bridge tension's the same and everything. And it also provides a good reference for down the road where you like your guitar set up. So if you do have a 6-inch ruler, like I say, they measure down to 64ths. I generally just use the 16ths or 32nds. Fret your guitar at the first fret, and I generally measure on the 17th, and it just gives you an idea of where that string height is. From the top of the fret to the bottom of the string, it's 2/32, and both sides. And that's a pretty average action on a guitar. You can sometimes set them a little lower on these if you want to, but that's all personal taste. Mm-hmm. So, and a little more in depth of a conversation sometimes.
Sure.
But because everybody has their own what they like. There's no right or wrong to how you have your guitar set up. It's whatever works for you.
Right. And I mean, this is digressing a little bit, but I mean, even obviously that's going to be relative to the way that you strum. If you're a really heavy-handed strummer, you're probably not going to have super low action because the strings are going to vibrate. They're going to hit those frets. So when you think of certain guitar players, like people that maybe use lower string action, they might pick softer or just be aware of the fact that they're probably not going to have those strings vibrating so much. So your playing style is going to make a big difference on something like that.
Well, certainly. But yeah, so that got you through the restring, hopefully. It's ready to go.
Cool. Well, thank you for watching. Hopefully you learned a little something about string changing on a floating tremolo system. Paul and I have got a lot more stuff coming your way soon. Make sure you contact me through GuitarZoom if you have any questions about stuff. If there's anything in particular you'd like him to talk about and me to sit here and listen to him, we'll go through it. So thanks, Paul. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll see you soon.